The rain drummed against the courthouse windows as I scrolled my signature across the final page, Eleanor Thomas, soon to be just Eleanor again. 5 years of marriage dissolved in black ink on clinical white paper. Adam sat across from me, his face a mask of practiced indifference. The lawyer droned on about asset distribution, but all I could focus on was the weight lifting from my shoulders with each passing second. That concludes everything. The liar said, collecting the papers with efficient movements. The divorce is finalized. Adam rose first, extending his hand like we were concluding a business meeting. Take care of yourself. Ellie, I shook it briefly, noticing how strange his touch felt. Now you too. Adam outside. The rain had turned Kansas City into a blur of gray. I stood under the courthouse overhang, watching people rush by with umbrellas and wondering how I should feel liberated, devastated. Instead, I felt hollow. At 32, I was starting over. My apartment welcomed me with echoing emptiness, half the furniture gone, bare rectangles on walls where Adam's pretentious art once hung. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my days reading micro-expressions and monitoring heart rates as people lied through polygraph tests, yet I'd missed years of my husband's growing indifference. I dropped my purse on the kitchen counter and kicked off my heels. The refrigerator offered nothing but a half-empty bottle of wine and leftover Chinese food fitting. I poured a generous glass and wandered to the window. The city lights blurred through the raindrops on glass, mimicking the tears. I couldn't seem to shed. My phone buzzed with a text from Harvey, my brother. All done, need company. I typed back, done, need space, talk tomorrow. What I really needed was to not think, to not feel, to not remember walking in on Adam with his graduate assistant last month. The final betrayal that pushed me to file. He'd apologized, claimed it was meaningless. Maybe all of it had been meaningless. I flipped open my laptop, mindlessly scrolling social media until an ad caught my eye. Kansas City Fall Marathon, challenge yourself, change yourself. The registration deadline was tonight. I'd never run more than 3 miles in my life. The idea was ridiculous, absurd, exactly what I needed. Something completely divorced from my actual life. Something physical that might drown out the emotional static. Before I could think further, I'd entered my credit card information, confirmation email received. I was now registered for a marathon in 6 weeks. I took another sip of wine, feeling something stir inside me. Not happiness exactly, more like defiance. Maybe I'd fail spectacularly. Maybe I'd collapse at mile 5, but it would be my failure, my collapse, mine alone that night. I pulled out dusty running shoes from the back of my closet and placed them by the door. Tomorrow I would start running away from what I'd done and toward whatever was next. I had no idea what that might be, but for the first time since finding Adam with that woman, I felt a flicker of curiosity about my future. I slept better than I had in months, dreaming not of Adam or the life we'd failed to build, but of movement, of my body carrying me forward while everything else fell away. 6 weeks of blisters, sore muscles, and pre-dawn alarms had brought me here to the starting line of the Kansas City Fall Marathon. Around me, lean bodies and technical fabrics stretched and bounced, looking like they belonged. I tugged self-consciously at my new running shorts, already regretting this entire impulsive decision. First marathon? The woman beside me asked, adjusting her race bib. That obvious, huh? I laughed nervously, trying to mimic her hamstring stretch. You've got that terrified but determined look. She winked. You'll be fine. I wasn't so sure. My longest training run had been 15 miles, and I'd limped the last 3. The announcer called for runners to line up, and my heart hammered against my ribs. What was I thinking? I analyzed lies for a living, but I'd been lying to myself, thinking I could do this. That's when I saw her standing a few rows ahead, bouncing lightly on her toes, brunette hair pulled into a high ponytail, shoulders relaxed like the starting line was her natural habitat. She turned, scanning the crowd, and for a moment, our eyes locked. Green eyes. She smiled, not the polite, tight-lipped smile of strangers, but something genuine that breached her eyes. I smiled back before she turned forward again, The starting gun-fired bodies surged forward, and I was swept along in the current of runners for the first 3 miles. Adrenaline carried me. I felt strong, powerful, even by mile 5. I settled into a rhythm, repeating my mantra, stronger than yesterday, stronger than Adam thought mile. 7 broke me a hill that hadn't looked intimidating on the course map, turned into Mount Everest beneath my feet. My lungs burned my quads. Screamed. Runners continued passing me as I slowed to a walk, hands on my knees water. I looked up to find the greenied brunette from the starting line, extending a water bottle. She'd clearly doubled back from somewhere ahead. You're going the wrong way, I wheezed. I'm pacing myself. She smiled, actually. I saw you struggling. First marathons are brutal. I'm Willow Eleanor, I managed. And yes, this was possibly the worst idea I've ever had. Nah, she fell into step beside me. The worst ideas don't make good. Stories later, this will with Willow beside me. The next miles passed differently. She talked enough to distract me, but not so much that I needed to respond. She shared techniques for the hills, pointed out landmarks, and somehow knew exactly when to push and when to let me recover. Why are you helping me? I finally asked around mile 15. I remember my first. She said simply, plus I like your determination. You don't have a runner's gait yet, but you have a runner's heart. By mile 20, everything hurt. The infamous wall had become a fortress, and my body rebelled with each step. Willow remained steadfast. Her presence both infuriating and necessary. You can leave me. I groaned. Get your times are for professionals. She replied, experiences are for the rest of us. The final mile stretched endlessly before us. Willow grabbed my hand as the finish line came into view together. She set her hand in mine. It felt like a lifeline as we crossed the finish line. Volunteers draped medals around our necks. I bent over, hands on knees, gulping air when I straightened. Willow was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You did it. She said, her fingers still loosely intertwined with mine. We did. I corrected, suddenly aware of how long we'd been holding hands. She didn't pull away, neither did I. I don't usually do this, Willow said, finally releasing my hand to dig through her running belt. She produced a business card, slightly damp with sweat. But marathon buddies should celebrate. Call me if you want to grab a recovery drink or dinner or whatever. As she jogged away toward the gear check, I stood, staring at the card, heart racing faster than during any part of the marathon. Willow Perez, interrogation specialist, Kansas City Police Department. I traced my fingers over the embossed letters, wondering if finishing a marathon was about to be the second most life-changing event of my month. Monday morning arrived with typical bureaucratic fanfare, the hum of fluorescent lights, the tepid coffee, the stack of polygraph assessments waiting on my desk. I settled in, muscles still sore from Saturday's marathon. I hadn't called Willow yet. The business card sat in my wallet, a small rectangle of possibility. I wasn't sure how to handle Thomas. Got a minute, my supervisor director. Jenkins poked his head in my office door. Of course, I minimized the report. I've been reviewing new transfers starting today. Interrogation specialist from Denver PD. Thought you two should collaborate on the Westfield case. I nodded, already mentally cataloging the Westfield files. A complex embezzlement scheme with a tight-lipped suspect. She's got an impressive background in behavioral analysis. Could complement your polygraph work when due. I meet her, I asked, reaching for my calendar. Right now, she's finishing paperwork with HR. 10 minutes later, I heard a knock. I looked up from my computer and froze. Eleanor, right guess. We meet again. Willow Perez stood in my doorway, green eyes crinkling with amusement. She traded running clothes for a tailored navy pants suit, her dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders. Here the transfer in my voice sounded strange. Even to my own ears, small world. She leaned against the doorframe, looking not at all surprised, or maybe not so small. I may have noticed your department affiliation when you registered for the marathon. My face heated. So you knew who I was at the starting line. She shrugged, smile, never faltering. I knew your name and division. The rest was happy coincidence. Director Jenkins appeared behind her, Ah, you've met excellent Paris Thomas is our best lie. Detector Analyst Thomas. Paris has pioneered some interrogation techniques we're eager to implement. I'd spent years reading micro-expressions, detecting the smallest tells of deception yet. I couldn't get a clear read on Willow as she settled into the chair across from my desk after Jenkins left. You didn't call, she said, arranging the Westfield files between us. I was recovering. I replied, not meeting her eyes marathon took more out of me than expected, HM. Her non-committal response suggested she didn't believe me, but wouldn't press. We spent the morning reviewing evidence, her insights sharp and intuitive. I found myself distracted by small details, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, how she gestured with her hands when explaining theories, the faint scent of something citrusy when she leaned close to examine documents. You're staring, she said suddenly, not looking up from the report. Professional assessment, I replied too quickly. Habit. Her eyes met mine, amused. And what does your professional assessment tell you about me? That you're observant, confident? I paused, deliberate. Oh, true, she acknowledged, though I'd add hungry to that list. Lunch. The cafeteria bustled with the usual midday crowd. We found a quiet corner table and conversation shifted from the case to more personal territory. So recently divorced, she gestured toward the pale line on my ring finger. How? Interrogation specialist. Remember, she smiled. Plus marathon registration lists. Your name changed from Sanchez back to Thomas. Finalized 3 weeks ago. I admitted 5 years, ended with a whimper and some paperwork. In a marathon, she added, most people buy a new wardrobe or get a drastic haircut. I've never been most people. We worked late that evening ordering takeout as we prepared for the next day's interrogation. Case files and Chinese food containers covered my desk as hours slipped by. We should probably call it a night, I said, finally noticing it was past 9. Willow leaned back in her chair, stretching her arms above her head. One question before we go shoot the marathon card. Her eyes held mine. Were you ever going to call? The question hung between us, loaded with implications. I don't know, I said honestly. This is unfamiliar territory. What part? Working together or the fact that you've been watching my mouth for the last 20 minutes? He crawled up my neck. I'm a divorce and your colleague. It's complicated. Life's complicated. She stood gathering her things, but drinks to discuss the case doesn't have to be. She paused at the door. Tomorrow after the interrogation. Just drinks, just colleagues. I nodded, knowing as she walked away that just colleagues felt like both a safe harbor and a complete lie. The Westfield case broke wide open under our combined approach. Willow's interrogation techniques coupled with my polygraph analysis created what our colleagues were calling the truth vortex. 3 weeks of working together had established a professional rhythm that felt seamless. What wasn't so seamless was the tension humming beneath our interactions. The lingering glances, the brush of fingers passing files, the way my pulse quickened whenever she leaned close to whisper observations during interviews after work drinks had become a regular occurrence, blurring the line between professional debriefing and something more personal. We were careful, always in public, always with plausible deniability about our intentions. Just colleagues discussing cases, nothing to see here. Then Adam showed up at my apartment on a rainy Sunday evening. You look good, Ellie, he said when I opened the door, rainwater dripping from his coat onto my welcome mat. I didn't invite him in. What are you doing here? Adam, I've been thinking about us. He pushed his wet hair back from his forehead, a gesture that once made my heart flutter. Now it did. Nothing. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes. Yes, you did. I crossed my arms. Is that all? Can I come in, please, against my better judgment? I stepped aside. Adam surveyed my apartment, noting the changes, new artwork, rearranged furniture, all traces of him erased. You've redecorated, he observed. I've moved on, I corrected. Adam sighed, hands in his pockets. That's fair. I deserve it. He looked at me with practiced contrition, but I've changed. Ellie, these months without you, they've shown me what I threw away. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head countless times during our separation, the satisfaction I'd feel rejecting him, the righteous anger I'd express instead. I felt nothing, no anger, no satisfaction, no longing, just emptiness where passion once Left, it's too late, Adam. I said quietly, whatever we had, it's gone. Is there someone else? He asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Willow's face flashed in my mind unbidden. I pushed the thought away. That's not relevant. We're divorced. You don't get to ask me that anymore. He left eventually after more pleading and reminiscing that felt like watching scenes from someone else's life. I closed the door behind him with a finality that should have felt cathartic, but instead left me confused, not about Adam, but about what waited ahead. Monday morning brought new complications. Jenkins assigned Willow and Emmy to observe interrogations for the district attorney's office, meaning hours together in the small observation room behind the two-way mirror. Everything okay? Willow whispered as the suspect was led in. You seem distracted. Fine, I murmured back. Just didn't sleep well. Her eyes lingered on my face, too perceptive. We'll talk later. Throughout the morning, I caught Roberts from accounting watching us with too much interest during lunch break. I overheard a snippet of conversation in the women's restroom. Definitely something going on there. Never seen Thomas so animated, always together. I hurried back to my office. Cheeks burning. Were we that transparent? Was I the thought terrified me, not because I minded people knowing, but because I wasn't sure what there was to know. What was happening between us remained undefined, unspoken that night. A winter storm warning prompted an early office closure. Willow and I found ourselves alone in the parking garage. Want to wait it out? She asked, gesturing to the sleet pelting the exit. I've got a thermos of coffee and patience. We sat in her car, watching ice form on the windshield, the world outside growing quieter as fewer cars passed. My ex-husband came. But yesterday, I said, finally breaking our comfortable silence. Willow nodded slowly. That explains the mood. He wants to reconcile. I knew her voice remained casual, but I noticed her fingers tighten slightly around her coffee cup. I felt nothing. I admitted, looking at him. There was just emptiness. She turned to me, then green eyes serious in the dim light. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. My heart stuttered. I'm gay. Her words hung between us, simple and profound, and I'm attracted to. You have been since I saw you at that marathon. She took a breath. I thought you should know, because whatever this is between us, it's not just friendship for me. The confession stole my breath, not because it surprised me. Some part of me had known, had felt it, but because hearing it spoken aloud made it real. I don't know what to say. I whispered, you don't have to say anything. She smiled softly. Just wanted my cards on the table. The car grew warmer, smaller. Outside, the world had disappeared. The hind sheets of ice inside. Something inevitable was happening. I know. Then she leaned across the console and kissed me soft, questioning. Everything shifted in that moment. My understanding of myself, of what I wanted, of what was possible. I kissed her back, answering questions I hadn't known. I was asking. I stood before my closet in a state of panic. Discarded outfits littered my bed, too formal, too casual, too much like work clothes. Was this a date? Of course it was a date. Willow had used that exact word when she'd called yesterday, Friday night. 7 o'clock, I'm taking you on a proper date, Eleanor. Thomas, after our kiss in the car 3 days ago, we'd been professional at work, perhaps overly so, careful not to touch even when passing documents, but the air between us had changed, charged with possibility and terrifying newness. I finally settled on a deep blue dress I'd bought months ago, but never worn. As I applied mascara, my hand trembled slightly. What was I doing? At 32, discovering this part of myself felt disorienting, yet somehow right, like finding a room in your house you never knew existed. The doorbell rang. Exactly at 7, Willow stood there holding a small bouquet of wild flowers, dressed in slim black pants and a forest green top that made her eyes more intense. You look beautiful, she said, her gaze traveling slowly from my face to my shoes and back again. So do you. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. The restaurant she chose was intimate without being obvious, a small bistro with ambient lighting and booths Offering privacy over wine and appetizers, conversation flowed easier than I'd expected. When did? I asked after our entree arrived that you were attracted to women. Willow considered me over her wine glass. College. I dated men in high school because that's what everyone did. Then I met my art history professor's daughter at a faculty mixer, and suddenly everything made sense. She smiled at the memory. It wasn't even physical at first, just this feeling of rightness when I was with her. And your family mixed reactions. Dad was great. Mom needed time. She shrugged. The hardest part was telling myself the truth. The rest followed. She set down her glass. What about you ever thought about women? Before I traced the rim of my water glass, considering I've had close female friendships that felt intense, but I attributed that to emotional connection. I paused. With you, it's different. I can't ignore the physical aspect. Her eyes darkened slightly. That's good to hear. The remainder of dinner passed in a blur of meaningful glances and brushing fingers outside the restaurant. The night air carried the crisp scent of approaching winter. Would you like to come over? I asked, surprised by my own boldness. For coffee or something? Her smile was knowing. I'd like that. My apartment felt different with her in it. Smaller, more intimate. I busied myself making coffee. We both knew we didn't want. When I turned from the counter, she was examining my bookshelf. You have eclectic taste, she observed, running her fingers along spines of psychology textbooks interspersed with mystery novels. I contain multitudes. I joked, handing her a mug. She took the coffee, set it aside. Yes, she said softly, stepping closer. I believe you do. Her kiss this time was confident, certain, my back pressed against the kitchen counter as her hands found my waist. Everything about her felt different, softer, warmer than what I'd known before. I let my fingers explore the curve of her neck, the silky texture of her hair. We can take this slow, she murmured against my lips. I don't want slow, I whispered back. The journey to my bedroom was punctuated by discarded shoes, my unzipped dress, her shirt unbuttoned. Each new revelation of skin was a discovery. The constellation of freckles across her shoulders, the surprising softness of her stomach against my palms. What followed was nothing like I'd imagined, and everything I needed, tender at times, urgent at others. Her hands found places no one had properly touched before, as if she had a map to parts of me I'd never fully explored. I followed her lead, then found my own rhythm, delighting in her responses. After we lay tangled in sheets, her head on my chest, my fingers tracing patterns on her back. You okay? She asked, looking up at me. More than okay, I said truthfully, just processing. She propped herself up on one elbow. Regrets? Then I touched her face, marveling at the softness, just wondering why it took me 32 years to figure this out. Some truths take time to reveal themselves, she said, echoing language from our work, especially the ones about ourselves. I pulled her closer, thinking about lies and truths in the spaces between. For someone who made a career of detecting deception, I'd been remarkably successful at deceiving myself, but not anymore. Whatever this was, whatever we were becoming, it felt like the truest thing I'd known. When morning light filtered through my blinds, I woke to find Willow watching me, a soft smile playing on her lips. What? I asked, suddenly self-conscious. Just memorizing this, she replied. You hear the beginning of something. 2 months into our relationship, life had found a rhythm that felt both extraordinary and surprisingly normal. Willow had unofficially moved half her wardrobe into my closet. We carpooled to work most days, careful to maintain professional boundaries in the office while sharing secret glances during meetings. Weekends were spent exploring Kansas City's hidden corners, or simply lounging in my apartment, cooking meals and building what increasingly felt like a shared life. This morning, though, something was off. I woke before Willow slipped out of bed and barely made it to the bathroom before a wave of nausea hit me. Kneeling on the cold tile floor, I tried to remember what we'd eaten the night before that could have caused this reaction. When the bathroom door creaked open, I quickly flushed the toilet and stood splashing water on my face. Hey, Willow said, concern etching her features. You okay? Fine, I lied. Something just didn't agree with me. She didn't look convinced, but didn't press as she showered. I leaned against the sink, mentally calculating my period was late, not dramatically. But enough to notice I'd attributed it to stress from our latest high-profile case, but combined with the morning sickness, no impossible, except it wasn't impossible that final night with Adam before I'd found him with his assistant. We'd been careless. It had been a last desperate attempt to salvage something already broken at work. I found myself distracted, missing details. During a witness interview that would have normally jumped out at me, Willow covered smoothly, but I caught her questioning glance afterward. I'm fine, I said before she could ask, escaping to my office. 3 days and 2 more morning sickness outs later, I found myself in a pharmacy bathroom staring at a positive pregnancy test. The pink line seemed to pulse in rhythm with my racing heart. I sat on the closed toilet lid test, clutched in my trembling hand, and tried to breathe a child. Adam's child, the irony wasn't lost on me, just as I'd found something real with. Willow, something honest, and right this complication from my past threatened to unravel everything. Eleanor Willow's voice called from outside the bathroom door. We'd planned to meet for lunch at the cafe across from the pharmacy. Are you in there? I shoved the test into my purse, washed my hands, and opened the door. Sorry, I said, forcing a smile. Line was long. Her eyes searched mine. You've been off all week. Talk to me, not here, I said, glancing around the busy pharmacy. Later, throughout lunch, I pushed food around my plate while Willow carried the conversation periodically, throwing concerned glances my way. Back at the office, I immersed myself in work, avoiding both Willow and my thoughts. That evening, I called my brother Harvey. I need advice, I said when he answered, and I need you not to freak out. Those 2 requests are mutually exclusive, he replied. But go on. I told him everything about Willow, about the pregnancy, about my paralyzing indecision. Harvey listened without interruption. A rare occurrence for my opinionated older brother. What are you afraid of? He asked, finally losing her. I admitted, we're still so new. This is a lot. It is. He agreed, but lies killed your marriage. Ellie, don't start this relationship the same way after. Hanging up, I sat on my sofa, staring at nothing. Harvey was right. My marriage had died by 1,000 paper cuts of half-truths and omissions long before. Adam's infidelity delivered the final blow. When Willow arrived at my apartment that night, I'd made no decisions except one: total honesty. She took one look at my face and set down her overnight bag. What's wrong? I need to tell you something, I said, gesturing for her to sit. Something unexpected has happened. Her face tensed. You're going back to Adam? God, no. The question shocked me. Never. Okay. She relaxed slightly. What then? I took a deep breath. I'm pregnant from before us, from Adam. I just found out. The silence stretched between us, terrible and complete. Willow's face moved through a series of expressions too quickly for even my trained eye to catalog. Finally, she settled on something I couldn't quite read. What are you thinking? I asked, unable to bear the silence any longer. I'm thinking, she said carefully, that this is a lot to process for both of us. I haven't decided anything, I rushed to say, about what to do. She nodded slowly. It's your body, Eleanor, your choice, but it affects us, I said, reaching for her hand. If there isn't us. Her eyes snapped to mine, suddenly fierce. Don't question that part. Whatever you decide about this pregnancy, my feelings for you haven't changed. Relief washed through me, followed immediately by fresh waves of uncertainty about everything else. The pregnancy test sat on the coffee table between us like a ticking bomb. Willow hadn't moved from the couch in the 20 minutes since my confession, her expression thoughtful rather than angry or hurt, which somehow made this harder. Say something, I finally pleaded. Anything. She met my eyes and trying to find the right words. This isn't exactly covered in relationship manuals. There isn't a right response, I said. I just dropped a bombshell on you. Willow leaned forward, elbows on knees. I meant what I said. This doesn't change how I feel about you. She paused. But it does change things, practically speaking. Outside thunder rumbled. A spring approaching, matching the turbulence in my apartment. I need to know what you're thinking. She said about the pregnancy about us. I rubbed my temples. I don't know, I never planned to be a mother. Especially not now, not like this. I looked up at her, but I also never planned to fall for a woman, yet here we are. A small smile tugged at her lips. Fair point. What about you? I asked, what are you thinking? She took a deep breath. I'm thinking that I care about you more than I expected to this quickly. I'm thinking that I want to support whatever decision you make. She hesitated. And I'm thinking that if you want this child, I'd like to be part of that equation somehow if you'd let me. Her words hung in the air between us. I stared at her, searching for signs of hesitation or insincerity. There were none. You'd want that. My voice cracked. To be with me, even with a baby. It wouldn't be easy, she acknowledged. But yes, she moved closer, taking my hand. Eleanor, I'm falling in love with you. This is a complication, not a deal breaker. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I could stop them. Willow pulled me against her chest, stroking my hair as I cried for the unexpected pregnancy, for the beautiful woman holding me, for the decision looming before me. When the storm outside reached its peak, so did our conversation. We talked for hours about every possible scenario, keeping the baby, adoption, termination. Willow never pushed in any direction, offering only thoughts and support. What about Adam? She asked eventually. Does he have a right to know? Legally, yes. I said morally, I'm less certain. As rain lashed against the windows, we held each other on the couch, making no decisions but finding comfort and connection. Eventually, we moved to the bedroom, where Willow held me until I fell into exhausted sleep. Morning brought clarity. I woke knowing what I needed to do. I want to consider adoption. I told Willow over coffee. I'm not ready to be a mother, but I also can't pretend this life doesn't deserve a chance, just not with me. She nodded, squeezing my hand. I'll support you every step of the way. The next weeks passed in a blur of doctor appointments and research. We interviewed adoption agencies, discussed open versus closed arrangements, and slowly built a vision of how this could work. Throughout it all, Willow remained my rock, attending every appointment, asking thoughtful questions, holding my hair during morning sickness episodes. Adam discovered the truth in the most mundane way, running into us at my obstetrician's office when he accompanied his sister for her appointment. Eleanor, his eyes dropped to my slightly rounded stomach, then darted to Willow, whose hand rested protectively on my lower back. Adam. I nodded, calmly, feeling none of the panic I'd expected. His face contorted with confusion, then anger. You're pregnant? And with her yes to the first, none of your business to the second, I replied, but we should talk, not here. We arranged to meet at a cafe the following day. Just the two of us. I expected recrimination, demands, threats. What I got was worse, a wounded man seeking reconciliation. It's my child, he said, voice breaking. We could try again. Ellie, be a family, no Adam. My voice remained gentle but firm. That chapter is closed for us. You'd rather raise our child with her. His tone turned bitter. I'm placing the baby for adoption, I said. And yes, Willow is my partner now, but this isn't about her. It's about us being over long before this pregnancy. He threatened legal action briefly, then deflated when I calmly outlined the reality of his limited rights. Given our divorce, by the time we parted, an uneasy truce had formed that night during another thunderstorm. Willow and I lay in bed listening to the rain, her hand resting on my growing belly. I love you. I said the words, finally finding voice through all this chaos. That's the one thing I'm certain. If she kissed me deeply, whispering her love against my lips as thunder shook the windows and lightning illuminated our intertwined forms, a tableau of unexpected beginnings amidst life storms. Adam's initial threats evolved into reality. A week later, when papers arrived from his attorney, he was contesting the adoption plan, claiming paternal rights. The legal language was cold and clinical, but the message was clear. He wasn't going to make this easy. He can't actually stop the adoption, my attorney assured me during our emergency consultation, but he can certainly complicate and delay it. Willow sat beside me, her hand steady on mine as The liar outlined our options. Her presence had become my constant, her strength something I leaned on without hesitation now, 5 months into my pregnancy, 4 months into our relationship, and it felt like we'd lived a lifetime together. We'll fight. This Willow said as we left the attorney's office together. Our professional lives became complicated when a high-profile murder case landed on our desks. The deputy district attorney specifically requested our team, my lie detection skills paired with Willow's interrogation expertise. The timing couldn't have been worse with my advancing pregnancy and the legal battle with Adam, but refusing wasn't an option. Thomas and Perez, my office director Jenkins, barked the next morning. He closed the door behind us, his expression grim. Detective Bryce has concerns about your objectivity on this case. Detective Liam Bryce, a 20-year veteran with old-school values, stood by the window. Arms crossed, his gaze flicked to my pregnant belly, then to Willow. With all due respect, he said, not sounding respectful at all, this case needs clear heads, not complicated. Personal dynamics, meaning what exactly? Willow's voice remained professional, but I recognized the dangerous edge, meaning everyone knows about. Your arrangement, Bryce gestured vaguely. Between us, Ad and the baby drama with her ex-husband, and it's a circus waiting to happen, I felt. Willow tense beside me, ready to defend us, but this wasn't the first time I'd faced prejudice, just a new variety. Detective Bryce, I said, calmly meeting his eyes, my personal life has never compromised my professional judgment, nor has Agent Perez's. Our case closure rate speaks for itself. Jenkins cleared his throat. Thomas is right, their record is impeccable. Unless you have specific concerns about their work, rather than their personal lives, I suggest we focus on the Harif murder. Bryce looked like he wanted to argue, but thought better of it. Fine, but if this goes sideways, it's on you. The case consumed. The next 2 weeks, a prominent businessman stood accused of murdering his partner over financial disputes. The evidence was circumstantial, the suspect well-connected and represented by Kansas City's most aggressive defense attorney. During our first interrogation session, Bryce hovered in the background, clearly waiting for us to fail instead. He witnessed our seamless teamwork. Willow built rapport with the suspect, establishing a conversational rhythm. I monitored his physiological responses through both the polygraph and visual cues, feeding Willow's subtle signals. When deception appeared, 3 hours and the suspect cracked, revealing details only the killer could know. As officers led him away, Bryce approached us in the observation room. I owe you both an apology, he said gruffly. That was impressive work. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was professional respect. Something we could work with that evening. We celebrated our professional victory at home, a small respite from the adoption battle still looming. As Willow cooked dinner, I received a text from Adam. We need to talk without lawyers should. I asked, showing Willow the message. She considered it. Maybe. This is good. He's reaching out directly. We arranged to meet Adam at a neutral coffee shop. The following day, he looked tired when he arrived. The combative energy from our last encounter replaced with resignation. I've been thinking, he said, stirring his coffee absently, about what you said about us being over before this. He looked up at me. You're right. What are you saying, Adam? I'm saying I'll sign the adoption consent forms. He sighed, fighting. You isn't going to bring us back. Nothing. Will relief flooded through me, but I remained cautious. What changed your mind, my therapist? He admitted with a self-deprecating smile. And time to think the baby deserves parents who want this, who chose this. That's not me, not really us. I walked home. I called Willow with the news. Her joyful response brought tears to my eyes, happy ones. For the first time in months that night, we finalized our list of potential adoptive parents, a task that now felt hopeful rather than fraught and dead. Willow's hand rested on my rounded belly as the baby kicked. Feel that? I whispered. She nodded, eyes wide with wonder, strong like us. I said, covering her hand with mine. After reviewing countless profiles, we finally found them. Sarah and Michael Barrett, a couple from Springfield, who couldn't have children of their own. Their adoption letter brought tears to my eyes with its Simple honesty and warmth. When we met them in person, the connection was immediate. They were kind, stable, and radiantly happy about the possibility of becoming parents. We want an open adoption, Sarah explained during our second meeting, we believe. Children should know their birth mother, if possible 8 months pregnant. I felt a weight lift at her words. I'd like that too. The adoption attorney finalized the arrangements, and with Adam's signed consent, everything proceeded smoothly as my due date approached. Willow transformed our apartment clearing space for the brief time the baby would be with us before going to the Barretts 1 year. Willow said suddenly one evening as we sat on the sofa, her hand resting on my enormous belly can. You believe it's been nearly a year since that marathon? I covered her hand with my best impulsive decision I ever made, running a marathon or taking up with your interrogation specialist colleague. Her eyes danced with amusement, both though. I'm never running another marathon. 2 weeks later, on a crisp fall morning, exactly 1 year after we'd first met, I woke to contractions. Willow remained calm while I panicked, timing contractions and packing the hospital bag. We'd prepared. The Barretts drove in from Springfield, waiting anxiously in the family room while I labored. 12 hours later, I delivered a healthy baby girl. The nurse placed her in my arms. For those precious first moments, a beautiful child who had my eyes, but thankfully not much else of me or Adam. She's perfect. Willow whispered, kissing my forehead after our agreed-upon time with the baby. 24 hours of saying hello and goodbye. Sarah and Michael came to meet their daughter, placing her in Sarah's arms was both the hardest and most right thing I'd ever done. Thank you, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. We'll love her with everything we have. Her middle name will be Eleanor. Michael added, if that's okay to honor you. 2 weeks after the birth, with my body still recovering and emotions raw, Willow suggested we run the Kansas City Marathon again, not to compete, but to witness it. Why would we do that? I asked, confused. For closure, for celebration, for us on marathon morning. We stood near the finish line, cheering for runners as they completed their journey. The air held the same autumn crispness as the previous year, but everything else had changed. Follow me, Willow said after the main wave of runners had passed. She led me to the exact spot where we'd crossed the finish line together. A year earlier, this is where it all began, she said, taking both my hands and hers, where I fell for your determination before I even knew your name. My heart raced as she dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from her pocket. Eleanor. Thomas, this year has been the marathon of our lives. Exhausting, painful, beautiful, and ultimately worth every step. She opened the box, revealing a simple emerald ring. Will you keep running this race with me? Will you marry me? Yes, I whispered, then louder, yes, as she slipped the ring on my finger. Spectators around us erupted in applause. Strangers celebrating a moment they knew nothing about yet, somehow understood was important. Later that evening, a photo arrived from the Barrett's baby, Lily Eleanor, sleeping peacefully in her nursery. We'd visit her in 2 weeks, the beginning of our open adoption relationship. Are you happy? Willow asked as we lay in bed, my head on her chest, her heartbeat steady beneath my ear. Not exactly, I replied honestly, there's sadness mixed in for Lily, for what might have been. I lifted my head to meet her eyes, but mostly, yes, deeply happy with you. Outside our window, Kansas City sparkled in the darkness inside. We held each other, two women who'd found truth in the most unexpected places, in a marathon, in an interrogation room, in loss and love. I never saw this coming, I whispered against her. Skin, the best truths, Willow replied, are the ones we never expected to find.